Xeodrifter is a Metroidvania style of game, which usually is characterized by a large, interconnected map for you to explore. And as you explore the map and defeat enemies, you gain abilities that allow you to access previously inaccessible areas of the map. For instance, one of the very first abilities you can earn in Xeodrifter is the submarine. This allows you to swim in the game, opening up one of the four worlds that has water as soon as you beam down. Other abilities that you can unlock include shifting back and forth between the foreground and the background, like in Mutant Mudds, and I think this game is actually made by the same team. You can also unlock a dash that allows you to run across lava very, very quickly. This is very handy during some boss fights. You have to run back and forth quickly as the boss is trying to stomp on you. You can get rocket boots, so you can shoot straight up and to get to high places with ease. Some abilities you only tend to use once, like the phasing through a wall ability, while others you use all the time. You can also upgrade your gun by finding, I'll call them gun parts, but they look like points. Your gun has different modes that you can use, and you can allocate your gun parts into whichever mode you prefer. So you can increase your firing rate, or you can increase the firing spread, that kind of thing. There's no commitment. You're not locked in once you spend a point. In fact, you can have multiple loadouts at your disposal, and at any time you can go in, remove the points, and put them in someplace else. There's no real story to the game, and it doesn't really require one, so don't worry about spoilers. Now, let's talk about what makes Xeodrifter great. Number one, the best thing about this game is the controls. The controls are tight and responsive. Now, I use an Xbox 360 controller. Now, this game does not use the thumbsticks. Instead, it uses the D-pad and buttons. Now, the Xbox 360 has a terrible, crummy D-pad. However, even with that terrible D-pad, I felt like I was in charge of what was happening on screen. So this means when you succeed, it's because you did something, not because you lucked into it. And when you fail, it's also because you did something or you failed to do something. So the controls are top-notch, and I definitely think that the company that put this game out has done a really great job with that. That company being Renegade Kid. The next really good thing about the game is the graphics. I'm not sure how to describe the graphics of the game. It's definitely an old school style. It feels like it falls somewhere around the 16-bit era, but it has flashes of modern glitziness that I really, really like. It definitely doesn't feel like something that could have run on the Super Nintendo or the Genesis, but it has the same feel to it. The colors are bright and have an almost neon electric feel to them as well. So the graphics are definitely top-notch. Another thing that's really awesome is the sound design. I have to admit it, I'm a sucker for this kind of music. When I talked about this game on the podcast, I mentioned that I wanted to buy the soundtrack. Well, I have the soundtrack now. You can pay whatever you want for it. I'll throw in a link below. It's a really great soundtrack, and I'll definitely be listening to it very often. Let's talk about what's not so great about the game. First off, the gun loadouts that I was talking about before, they have to be accessed via a pause menu. They should be tied to a button press. There's plenty of buttons on the controller that I could use. That way, I could quickly switch between loadouts on the fly and deal with things in real time. The same with the solar flare, which is like your big build-up ability. I want you to think of Mega Man holding down a button until and charging up his buster, and then you let it go. Kind of like that. I think, and Samus has one like that as well. So the solar flare ability, you get this close to the end of the game, and each time you want to use it, you have to pause the game, use the D-pad to arrow over to it, and turn it on. It really breaks the flow of combat and feels kind of clunky. I almost feel like it would have been best to... Well, they have basically, when you hold down the button, it is constantly shooting. So when you switch over to Solar Flare and you hold down the button, it's charging. And when you have the Solar Flare turned on, you can't just tap the button to shoot because it just starts charging and then lets go. So I definitely think that it would have been best to have mapped that to some other button, or to have it be a toggle where I can pull on one of the bumpers or one of the triggers and have it switch from regular mode to Solar Flare mode, instead of pausing, hitting the D-pad over, arrowing over to it and turning it on. It just doesn't work very well. The next negative for it is the level design. I kind of struggled deciding where to put where to put level design in this review, because part of it is really great and part of it isn't. I'm still not sure where it belongs in onto great or not. The level design is awesome, but the save system that goes along with it is horrendous. There's only 3 places in the whole game where you can save. At your ship, right before a boss, and right after a boss. That's it. There's no other options. And I don't feel like this is an oversight by the developers, though. I want to point that out. It's not like they didn't do a good job with it. I just feel like it was a deliberate choice that they made that I don't happen to agree with. So maybe you will agree with them when you play it. It's not going to be for everybody, but that save system is really, it feels archaic. And that might be what they were going for. So it hurts the game a little, but it's a good enough game that it makes up for it in other ways. The absolute worst thing about the game is the copying and pasting of the boss. It could have been avoided, but there is only one boss in the game, and you have to fight that boss over and over. Now, it is true that each time that you encounter this boss, it gets a new ability added to it. So it feels like you're fighting a more and more powerful foe as you progress through the game. But having the same model each time just kind of feels cheap. If they wanted to have this mechanic, that's fine. I just think that they would have been better off had they made some different art. Have the boss be the same, the boss mechanics act the same way that they did in the game, but give me different art to look at. Not only is the boss repeating, but the number of different enemies in the game is very minimal. Again, this might be a design decision that I don't agree with, or it might be funding. Maybe they just didn't have the money to make more enemies or more varied enemies for the game. I'm not sure. Either way, seeing the same boss for the second time just made it feel kind of grindy. And as you go up against this boss 3, 4, or 5 times, all you can think is, this guy again? Those are the pros, those are the cons. The TLDR of this is that Xeodrifter is a fantastic game, and it has a lot going for it. Now, right now on Steam, it's $9.99. But full disclosure, I picked it up on sale for $3. If you enjoy a Metroidvania style game, or if you enjoy platformers, definitely check this game out. It's very fun, but be prepared for some frustrating boss fights. That's something I didn't talk about before, is that the boss fights are very brutal and very precise. You have to be on top of your game for the whole time. Anyway, that's Xeodrifter, and this has been a Run Jump review. I'm Run. Thanks for watching.